Hello and welcome to this training session. My name is Ashraf Ayad and I'll be working with you today looking at the new Maya 2009 feature, which is render passes. In particular, we'll be looking at the pass contribution map. So the pass contribution map is a tool that is designed to allow you to determine which light or which objects that you want to contribute to the final render pass. So for example, looking at my image here, I output the parts of the bike by itself. So for example, I have the body, the engine, the tires. They can render out by themselves. And for this example, I took it out as a beauty pass. You can do matte or you can do spec per object. And in here, you can also output it per light. So for example, I had two lights in this scene. I output light 1 diffuse, light 1 spec, and light 2 diffuse and light 2 spec. By doing that, you're opening a wide range of possibilities to control or to have better control over your final image in the compositing phase. Alright, so we have lots of things to do, so let's get started. If we're looking at our scene here, we have this bike sitting on the road, and we have two major lights. One is yellow and the other one is bluish. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to output these parts of the bike by themselves in the pass contribution map via pass contribution map. So the first thing I'm going to do is to select the parts that I want to contribute in that particular pass, and I'm go to my master render layer. I only have one render layer here. I'm going to right click and I say pass contribution map, create and add selected. And that will automatically create a pass contribution map for you and add the selected geometry to it. And let's call this tires. Alright. You can also do a empty one. So this one, for example, doesn't have anything. And then select the body or the object that you want to contribute and right click and add selected objects. You can double check that what you've done is by right clicking on the pass contribution map and say select object in this pass, and here it is. Let's do a last one for the tires. Sorry, we did the tires, let's do the engine now. Add selected, and this we call this the engine. Alright. You could have obviously done that via the render layers. However, the benefit of using pass contribution map is will save you some render time. Let me explain this a little bit, because when you're using render layers, let's say that you have 5 layers. What will happen is that the render engine will load the geometry in the first layer, render it, unload it, and then go to the second layer and repeat the same steps again. But when you do it in via one render layer in one pass or via the pass contribution map, you are saving yourself the loading and unloading, and that will eventually save you some render time. So again, to repeat what I've done, I just added objects in these particular pass contribution maps. I'm just going to go now to my passes section in my render layers. I'm going to choose which pass that I want to output. For example, let's take beauty and matte. Here it is. And let's give it a suffix here, for example. Sorry, not suffix, prefix for the tires. Okay, create. Let's do one for the engine. Let's create. And let's do another one for the body. And hit create. Alright. So now I need to associate all these guys with the proper pass contribution map. Now, once you created these pass contribution map in your master layer or your render layer, you'll see them available for you in here. So all I'm going to do is just make sure that these two are going for the body. Same thing with the engine. And the last is the tires. Once I'm done, I'm just going to hit close. Pretty much I'm ready to render, so let's go ahead. Once the render is complete, we can go examine our files, and you'll notice here that it came out correctly as we expected. So we have the bike, beauty, and then the bike body, and then the bike matte. And one benefit you will see, you see the parts of the geometry that was not included in the render path contribution map is not in, and it holds it out. So it's a very good way to composite. Let's look at the engine and the engine mat and the tires mat. And you will notice you always output the master beauty, because this is the one that's being calculated as the final image, and the path contribution map, all what they've done is just extracted the parts that was already rendered. Alright, so let's do another one per light. Let's create the path contribution map per light now. So we're just going to create 2 empty passes. We call this light 1 and this one for light 2, and we add the objects that we want to contribute to this pass. So this is for light 1, right click and add selected. This is for light 2, right click and add selected. A quick way to check is to right click on your path contribution map and say select objects. Now we have light 1 and select objects, and that will show us light 2. Now I'm just ready to go to add my passes in here, and let's take out diffuse and spec. Here it is, and this is for light 1, create, and while they are selected I'm just going to do light 2, create and close. Now this is per scene, we want to associate it per layer, and now since we have a path contribution map, we can associate it as well. And for light 2 we want to go for light 2. So now we're ready to go. Just going to hit close, render, batch render. Let's examine our images. We have light 1 diffuse, it was yellowish, and of course the spec. And light 2 diffuse, it was bluish color, and you can see here, and the spec as well. And remember, we always have the master beauty comes out with us. Alright, so everything came out as we expected, and this is how we use the path contribution map to output per light for this particular scene. Let's do one final example to output ambient occlusion passes via the path contribution map. So I'm just going to create 2 empty maps here. For this one we're going to call it world, and this one bike. And we're going to associate or add the world to this map and the bike to this one. Check, make sure that I have everything correct. Everything seems to be in working order. I'm going to go to my render settings in the render passes, and I'm going to choose ambient occlusion, and the prefix I'm going to say 1 for bike, create, and 1 for world, create and close. Same thing that we've done before. We associate them with this particular render layer, and since we have path contribution map, we're just going to make sure that this one is going for the right one. World going for world and bike going for bike. And since we are using ambient occlusion, you want to make sure that the ambient occlusion button is checked on in your render settings under indirect lighting. And here it is. So all I'm going to do now is hit render, batch render. Let's have a quick look at our final result. Here's the bike ambient occlusion and the world ambient occlusion. And you will notice that the bike cutout or the hole for the bike is there, but you will notice as well that the bike occlusion is on the ground, which is accurate for this particular layer. If you, however, planning to output the street or the world just by itself for an ambient occlusion with no contribution from that bike, you probably should have done it in the old-fashioned way where you add that street in a render layer by itself and output it that way. But with using the path contribution map, as we said earlier, it will save you some render time, plus it will add a wider variety of options when you're rendering your final result, and this will help you in the final compositing phase of your render. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this session, and I will talk to you soon.